Okay, let's see if I get this right.
Mm-hmm.
It's season 6, episode 9. Are we still 217 though?
Um,
Did I get that right last week?
I don't know. I'd have to check.
I'm looking.
I think I included it in my Insta. The way I posted it last time. I think.
No, it is 217. I got that right. I got the sequential 214, 215, 216. All that's right. But last week I said it was episode 7. No, sorry. This is episode 9. October 15th was episode 7. Last week, October 22, I called it 7, but it should have been 8.
Okay.
But I did call it 216. So I'm good with the 217. I just need to change this one. Last
All
week
right.
to episode 8, this week to episode 9. Oh my God.
This
I am like,
thing is tough. It's tough.
if this is it, if I'm struggling with this, then I must be struggling with other things because this is supposed to be easy.
I don't want to catastrophize the moment.
We already have a listener, which is a watcher. Somebody's viewing already.
A watcher. We have a watcher. Hey, you got to make sure it is. Yeah, they're listening. That's the liberatory element of our podcast. That's the libertarian element of it, is that we can't tell you what to do. We can't. You can choose to listen,
but it's not right.
You don't have. That's okay. So the libertarian is that you can choose not to, right? You can just live your freestyle and wild kind of mindset with our podcast, if it's even a podcast. The conversation, yeah, won't make it overly technical. It's our conversation about whatever, normally on a Saturday, but didn't work this week to hold the Saturday accountable for a conversation. So it's just a conversation on a Sunday. That's cool. Watcher, listener, whatevs.
Whatever works for them.
What would work for me is if they actually moved to the level of contributor as well, where they drop some wisdom, some knowledge, something that's do we post out the agenda ahead of time so people can be prepared for this?
Bro, we don't have an agenda ahead of time.
All right. Let's start with dad details then.
Okay.
So I can remember
talk about Halloween because I said something on the internet about being spooky. So let's talk spooky at some point today.
All right. Make a note. Put that on a post-it note. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves somewhere out in the middle of the field, plucking flowers and chewing on our baseball gloves. Just not sort of. That's how I played baseball when I was a kid. Clough, the ball's coming to you. I'm like, what? I'm holding a fistful of dandelions. Like, that's the most important thing in the middle of a baseball game. So dad details. I think it was last year, the year before, some year before now. I think I remember texting you or posting up somewhere about the nice clean edge of the snowblower line on my driveway. And it basically looked like a wall. It was like a Lego wall, perpendicular line to the edge of my driveway with the snowblower and the dad details. And I think we had a bit of a laugh out of it, but it's continued to be sort of a theme about stuff, sometimes practical, sometimes personal. Well, I guess always personal, sometimes idiosyncratic, about the way that we sort of do things as dads and the seasonality of it. Like for right now, this is winter tire season. This is shutting down the I guess the deck season, getting the furniture and the cushions. It's the last lawn mows of the season, potentially. If you're for me, it's getting in the bulbs into the ground, because I've told you I don't give a shit about my lawn. It's the garden. I like having stuff in the garden. So getting some of those bulbs in there every year is kind of important to me before the ground frosts up, and then sitting like in my front window, just trying to scare away the squirrels, because they'll come and like dig those things up right away. It doesn't matter. You drop them 6 inches, 7 inches. You want to see an industrious little bugger. It's a squirrel noticing that there's something buried, 6 inches down, and they just dig, pull it up and leave it there. Like, I don't know. But I think there's some bulbs that they like to eat. So it's all these dad details that kind of pop up. And I you had mentioned something about one of your personal dad details things, you calling it out as a gong show if it doesn't get done in the way that you need for it to get done. So I asked about that. I'm curious about that because there is an element I think within all the dad details that regardless of the reason, that as a dad you think the world's going to fall apart if it doesn't if it's not done that specific way. And one of the things I've really appreciated, and I think well, I'll call it, I think therapy, some of the conversations I've had at therapy, I think have like helped me sort of, kind of crack this open a little bit too. But it's just the taking in the feedback and not taking it in any sort of like with expectation. It's just kind of feedback and commentary. So, my family will ask me questions about why I do a thing they do or why I didn't do a thing that I didn't do, and trying to find more comfort in just calling it out why it is. And then even after I give feedback to their feedback, again, aka a conversation, I still decide whether or not I'm going to go through with the idiosyncratic kind of nature of it, or I take the time to kind of say, I'm going to label that as advice. So I don't take it as advice right away. I just take it in as information. I guess you call it advice if you're sort of prepared to action it in some way, that there's something of a, my dad details could be improved. But it is, I think one of the, I think, you know, as I've done all this deep thinking about dad details. Um, and really, we could call this teacher details. We could call it dog details. It's not. I mean, anybody can have details that they sort of keep in their operating system, their routines, the habits, the way that they do things. I think dad details just kind of add some cachet to it, a little bit of comedy as well. Um, but what I really started to realize about the dad details, and if uh, I would love to, maybe this will be partially a topic that pops up in the BC for Men WhatsApp conversation around like I often feel maybe I've decided this. I don't know if I actually feel this or I just decided it, that dad details, like it's always a solo mission. Like I always feel like I'm making these kind of decisions about the details with without much recon. I just kind of do it. And then when I really kind of break it down, I feel like I'm the guy. I'm the one that has to take care of this. Like this is me. I got to take care of this detail, which is not entirely true because someone observes you do it, and then you ask your question. You realize, okay, these details aren't just like it's not just me by myself doing it. Other people are noticing it. Sometimes people appreciate it. Sometimes people comment on it. But I often feel really isolated when I think about the dad detail stuff because somewhere in my mind, I think I'm doing these for the family, which the family, me, I'm doing it for them to try and sort of, but then, sometimes when I drill down to it, I'm like, nah, this is primarily just for you. This is how you roll. It's just kind of how you do things. And one of the spaces that I've grown to appreciate is the moment where I allow someone to comment and not take it as like a, take it like somehow like they're dissing the work that I've done. That I can just take it in as information and wait to decide whether it's advice. And if it can still be advice, but then I choose whether or not to take it as advice. So dad details. Did you write that post-it note about Halloween and scary? We don't want to lose that one. Yeah.
I wrote the word spooky on my sticky note. When it comes to
Moms have
dad,
details too. Moms have details too. Not omitting that. Moms, dads,
bro,
grandparents.
the last time
Yeah.
I checked, though, you and I are dads, so we're allowed to call it
All right.
dad details, are we not? Since we're talking about our,
Of course, our lived experiences.
and of course, we're not shutting down or saying that there aren't mom details and grandpa
Hmm.
details and
Hmm.
uncle details. We're not saying that. We're just saying you and I talk about the dad details.
Hmm.
We're allowed to
Yep.
say that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we can say that. So, um, with respect to dad details, it was you that started this whole dad detail thing. You brought it up years ago. One day when we were talking, you called them dad details. I've adopted the term that there are certain things as a dad that I will do or that I do that are important to me, but really to nobody else. But I guess the way I see it is, if I don't enter into particular details, then things are neglected, and then down the road, things become problems that never needed to be a problem or an issue, right? Like that's just the way I see it. So that's what I call dad details for me, stuff that I do that maybe everybody else thinks doesn't need to be done or could be done differently. But if I'm doing them, then I'm going to do them my way. And I guess I'm open to listening to suggestions from the armchair quarterbacks. Some of the suggestions might be good and some of them might not be good.
Mhm.
And I like your piece about, so what do we do with those? How do we deal with emotions that might pop up because of those things or our responses to those? It's an art for me to listen to some BS and then decide whether it's BS or it's not. And then how do I respond? Do I even need to respond? I don't need to respond. I've learned that. Sometimes I don't need to say anything or do anything about what someone's done or said. I just keep going. There's a place, a time and a place for that, I think. Rochelle says everyone's experiences count. Of course they do because they're your experiences. So they count. But who do they count for? Right? Like, so Clough could have, like, he was, I'm a grass guy. He's not a grass guy. I could tell him,
Garden guy.
sorry. Yeah, you're a garden guy. I don't particularly care about the garden. The, the, I got to cut down the grasses. But other than that, I'm not a garden guy. I don't care about the garden. Um, but fortunately, we have stuff in our garden that doesn't need a lot of attention. So, and that was done on purpose because I don't think Sarah is a garden person either. I think she likes the idea, but she doesn't get out there and like work on it. So we have stuff that grows and does its thing. We don't need to do anything with it. But the grass, I pay very close attention to the grass, and you don't. And you pay attention to the garden, and I don't. So when I listen to your garden talk, I find it interesting. I listen. It's not motivated me to do anything with my garden. I listen to your experience, and for you it counts, and for me it doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot. And I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but this is my assumption, that when I talk to you about the grass, you listen to me. It's entertaining perhaps, but doesn't motivate you to do anything with your grass. You just keep living your life. And so everyone's experiences count. I don't believe I discount your
Mm-mm.
um, experiences with your garden. I listen. I think I'm respectful of your garden talk. It's engaging, but it's not enough for me to act. So I get that. I'm cool with that. Like I'm okay with that in life. I don't need people to hear my experiences and then need to do something about it. And I don't expect, well, maybe people expect that of me, but that's not cool to have your expectations on me without having a chat about that first, maybe. I don't know. This whole thing gets a little bit. And then add the layer of marriage, so when my wife talks, I believe I should listen. And I believe that sometimes compromises are made, whether I agree or disagree, because of that thing called marriage. Other people have other ideas about marriage and how it works. Mine is she's my partner, my life partner. So for me, it's important that I listen, which I struggle with. She'll tell you that. And not only listen, but act and compromise. But that's just me. I'm not saying everybody has to do that in their marriage. Everybody's got their own gig going on. They do what works for them. Dad details, marriage details, there's all kinds of details.
I don't. It's so first. One of the things I dig is that when you talk about your grass, there's things that you say, and I'm like, yeah, I know that. Like when you're relating about the watering, I know that. You're talking about the fertilizing. There's a season, right? You come in with one, you go out with another. There's a time to top dress. There's a time to aerate. I know all these things. It's funny as related to things that I've uh, learned about in gardening. Grass pops up a lot, so I read it. I take it in. I like that. I actually take some. I take some um, happiness from the fact that some of the stuff you're talking about that's important to you that I kind of knew that. I don't do it, but it's come up. Like um I don't water too little or too much. I just don't water. I let the rain do it. I'm like, grass is here. Let the climatological uh circumstances. You like if the rain isn't enough for the grass, then that's the grass's problem. It's kind of how that's the way I look at it. I'm like, you know what? It was here before me. It'll be here after me. It'll probably be over me wherever I'm sort of like buried someday. Grass is eternal. I'm just gonna leave it. Let it do its thing. Let it do its thing. I'll cut it. I'll cut it. Why do I cut my grass? Why do I cut my grass? That's what I was trying to think. Like, so what's my motivator then?
Why do you cut your grass?
I know. So see, this is where I get to. I think that I have grass entirely just because I think that my family wants it. So it's kind of like I'm the steward or caretaker for somebody else's needs. Because I would in a minute, and I'm slowly doing it to our front yard as I'm digging up the grass and putting in perennials. Right. So part of the problem with our front yard is we have this massive uh, blue spruce, and it just acidifies the dirt, and there's a lot of coverage. It's too big, and it's a previous. This is a previous owner problem that we this tree is just it's taller than our house, right? And I've had to shore it up underneath just so that we can kind of see out our front window, get some sort of like light in the front of the house. So, anyways, I have grass because I think other people want it. Yeah.
Do you
The
think with
whole
this awareness, this might shift in the next
with
couple of seasons? Like, do you think eventually you may say to the family, if you guys want grass, you're welcome to take care of it because I'm not going to anymore?
No, I think I'll just start ripping it up and putting things in.
Gotcha. So you'll just continue to eliminate as much of it as you can.
Yeah, in bits and pieces. That
Right.
that type of work is actually more work than cutting grass.
Rochelle says you cut the grass so bylaw doesn't come.
Yeah, yeah, but the other thing too is they can bylaw can come, but that's sort of a um the it's less likely uh it's I it's good, sure, maybe that didn't occur to me actually, the bylaw part of it. So then like no one gives a crap about what's in my backyard though, right? No one's seeing that. You can let your grass grow as high as you want in the backyard. So I don't even know. That's so yeah, thanks Rochelle. You got me something to look at. But see the thing is that um I would and I got I love it. We a couple listener watchers ganging up on this conversation. I love it. It's interactive. But so I think that when it comes to the grass in the front and the back, part of it is I mow it. You know what the thing is? I think every time I mow it, what I'm actually doing is I'm mapping out where I'm going to put more perennials. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing it to kind of remind myself, yeah, I need to get, and part of it is that I need to get rocks in order to sort of rock it out. So then I rip up the grass in the center, I dump some good soil in there, and then I start to plant something. So it was funny this year. When I did a mow, I don't know, sometime in the last week or so. And I was looking at some of the ornamental grasses that I have in the front, and I just kind of noticed all this. I'm like, wow, that's what those things look like as adults. Because you put them in and they take a while to kind of either get floofy or get red or get swayy. Like they're all they're immature for a long time. And then all of a sudden it seems like they're just um, nice to look at, I guess you'll say. So then I'm like, okay, they're good. Don't have to pay attention. So now I need another spot to put something else in. So I think I mow with the intent of just trying to see what the palette can look like. With the details, though, it's for me, it's less about me being a dad and just me being Chris. I don't take advice well, I realize. So when people are commenting on the dad details, how I respond to people's information, advice, whatever you want to call it, when they their comments, I respond very similarly in my as a teacher. I know I had in my workspace. I remember a couple years back, I got some feedback on my IEPs from the principal, and took the feedback. I left the moment, went off, and then there was maybe a couple weeks later. talking with the principal, and they said to me flat out, like, "You don't take good feedback very well, do you?" And I'm like, "Where's this coming from?" They're like, "Come on into the office." And we just talked about, because admin has to look at all they look at all the IPs, and really, if principal details are active at the same time that my spec ed details are active, ultimately the principal has to sign off on an IEP. So them mentioning, "Oh yeah, like I think you want there was some sentence structure here," or did you forget to put in that part for the sources consultant? I forget what it was. And I was like, I kind of had a harumph moment, and it played out. Like, I didn't maintain poker face. And I definitely did not have gratitude face, because they called me back afterwards. They're like, "Yeah, it's kind of a moment there. Was there anything you wanted to share about me sharing?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Well, the look on your face." I'm like, "Yeah, I know that look. I do that look." Um, Therapy will help me work that out too, I guess. But part of it is just the way I take. I know that my feedback often, when I receive feedback, um, I guess it goes back to that thinking about feedback as neutral and not being too quick to take it as I did a bad job. So I don't have to defend against anything. I don't. Like, I don't have to defend against the feedback. I don't have to defend against losing the relationship. I don't have to defend against like someone's mad or angry with me. Right. I don't have to let that play out on my face. Yet it does. The struggle's real, right? When someone ever gives me feedback. I now know for sure that they're looking at me and like, "Whoa, he looks really pissed off. Looks pissed off. Why is he so pissed off?" So,
Along those lines, I got 2 things. The first one is it reminds me that sometimes I actually ask for feedback, and I'm
mhm.
pretty open to it. Like, I know there have been times, well, almost daily, you and I go back and forth sharing things with each other, and sometimes I'll share something or tell you something and say, "Hey, I wanna hear what you have to say."
You're very intentional about that. You've trained me to listen for that. And I appreciate that was one of those things I've been meaning to tell you. So I'll say it in front of all of our listener watchers
The
that,
thousands and thousands
yeah,
that are
yeah.
here,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've noticed that. I've noticed that intentionality in your language, that you've demonstrated to me that sometimes you're just sharing, but then other times you're craving. Like, you're welcoming the feedback. And it's changed a little bit in how it hasn't changed how I receive feedback. I'm still not very good at it, but it has changed in when I offer. Like, I'm trying to work through um, my automaticity, the knee jerk reaction to provide feedback. That could be a teacher thing, could be a Clough thing. Don't know. Probably a little Chris thing, something from my childhood, just wanting to be heard. Um, but yeah, I've noticed that in your language. You're pretty specific. Not pretty, you are specific at times where you say, I want your opinion on this. Can you offer up your thinking?
And I think that's important for me because when I do that, then when I get the feedback, um, it's open. It's like, okay, I've asked this person, I'd like to hear their thoughts. It doesn't mean I'm going to do what you say. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree with what you think. Um, I'm just open to it, right? So there are times, and it happens all the time. It's a pretty cool exercise. When I do that, I'm I'm like you said, I'm welcoming your feedback. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Sometimes I'm like, that's great. I know where Chris stands. I don't agree. Or, holy cow, I never thought of it that way. That's a good one. And then I do what I want with it. Um, so that's important for me because I've always struggled with feedback. So now when I say to somebody, I'd like your feedback, I actually mean it. Because there are times where I say something, they're like, "Do you want my feedback?" I'm like, "Not really." And then they're like, "Whoa." I'm like, "Why are you woeing me?" Because in the outside world, I'm supposed to be polite and just say, "Yeah, yeah." I'm like, "No, I don't want it. You might give it to me anyway." Okay. I don't particularly want it. I'm not open to it right now. Um, so that's one thing I was thinking. The other thing was I remember working for a principal who was by the book. Everything was by the book. And so for this principal, report cards were written in a very formulaic manner. So I was working for this principal for 3 years. Um, and that's 9 sets of report cards. After the first set, I learned exactly how to write for this person, and I even would plant simple mistakes in the report cards in order to move this person away from my content and into the stuff that's very easily fixed. But not the content couldn't easily be fixed because that was my like lived experience with with a child. So I learned from my first set how to operate with this individual, and I would plant issues in my reports and then watch them go right for it. So then while everybody's crying in the staff room, "Oh my God, my report cards have been destroyed," I've got a big smile on my face because I'm like, all the mistakes I made and then printed my report cards and corrected, that person went after. So I've got no more new work to do because I fixed everything that I made the mistake in the first place on purpose. So for 8 sets of report cards, I wrote like a robot. And then I moved schools finally, 3 years too late, and I'm working with a principal that I huge respect for. I handed my first set, and he calls me in, and he's with the vice principal, and I'm like, "Why are you guys being so gentle with me? What's the problem?" They're like, "These report cards, they're like, it's not, they're not personal at all." I'm like, "Give me more." They're like, "Well, Roland, like you did, it's like you're a computer, like you just spit out." I'm like, "That's how you write report cards." They're like, "Roland, come on, we need you to be a little bit more." I'm like, "No, for 3 years, I was, there's nothing wrong with my report cards. If you look at the school board checklist, everything's checked off. I've done them correctly." They're like, "There's no life to these report cards." I'm like, "Exactly. There's not supposed to be because I learned for 3 years. That's not how you want my opinion here? You want me to lighten this up? No. Uh-uh." And it was an interesting moment because I was very offended and they could tell. And they were very both humanist type people. So like, wow, that principal broke him. Like he's not acting like he acted before he worked for that person. And it took me, I think that whole year, all 3 sets for me to soften up, to ease up, to give them what it is that they were looking for in the report cards. Um, but I was very much, I didn't want to hear it. I followed board protocol. I checked off everything the board asked me to do. And these guys are like, "You sound like a robot." I'm like, "Yeah, isn't it awesome?" Like I was proud. I was like, "Formulaic, baby. Formulaic." And they're like, "These are not personal." Like they were they were like, when I talked about Johnny's art, I referred to, I'd say the positive comment, and then I would have an example of that comment for Johnny, and it was different than Jimmy, and it was different than Chris and Roland. They all had a different one, so they were personalized, but they read like a robot wrote them, and I was very proud of that, because that's what I had learned. That's how I learned to write over 3 years. 3 years is a long time to to like learn how to do something and then be told this doesn't work at this school this way. So, needless to say, when I ask for feedback, I've 98% of the time prepared myself for whatever, for the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I'm asking for it. So I'm telling myself, okay, if you're asking for it, be authentic about it and take it in and then deal with it. Sometimes I'm not asking for it, um, but I may get it anyway. And then, so the art for me now is to learn how to listen, how to take it in, and then to make a decision. Um, do I act on the feedback or do I not act on the feedback? Can some of it actually, is my ego getting in the way? Am I hurt by this person, or am I feeling like they're hurting me? Um, I don't know, man. There's layers there, but I'm more open to that now than I was 10 years ago. So there's growth, sure, which is good. Growth is good, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For me, it's good.
Growth is good.
That could be the title of this episode. I'm gonna write that down. Growth is
All
good.
right.
We got to go spooky now.
Okay, do spooky.
So Halloween is upon us, and I'm not prepared at all. And I think it's I think it's there's a number of reasons. Like the boys don't seem to be into it this year. My
The
wife
are
doesn't seem
they
into it.
down with the candy collecting?
The young one is. We've got
Okay.
that set. That was set up about a week and a half ago. Where he's
Hmm.
going, who he's going with, that's all set. So he's going. He doesn't have a costume though, really. Like
Hmm.
I'm like, what are you gonna be? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, it's kind of too late for us to just go. We could go grab something, but I don't want to. I don't want to get in the car and go get him an outfit. So I suspect he'll wear something that he already has in the house, but no, he's not stressed about it at all. He's just like, whatever. We got a pumpkin yesterday. I got a text from my wife. She's like, we don't have a pumpkin. Should we have a pumpkin? I'm like, ask the boys if they want a pumpkin. We'll get a pumpkin. So she got a pumpkin. Like everything just seems to be, it's just happening
Willy
um,
nilly.
as it comes, I guess. What about your
Okay.
kids? Are they pumped? Are they going out?
Yeah, they're interested. We had so pumpkins. We got pumpkins because we went to Brooks Farms up our way. So we went there a couple weeks back. Weather started to change, and we picked up some pumpkins. When we had them out front, little sort of your Halloween diorama of flowers and pumpkins, whatever you sort of set up as the decorative element for Halloween. Um, so we were away on Monday, Tuesday of this week. We came back and something had eaten into the back of one of the pumpkins. So we figured the squirrels decided to go in and have a snack. So then now we're down a pumpkin. We didn't go out and get any more. So I this year I was not interested in doing a pumpkin. So the fam, each of them got one. So they're gonna be opening those up and seeding them and working on them today. Um, both my kids have said that they're going to go out. They're going to go out and collect candy. They're sort of this is the year they're navigating the. I guess us as the parents, we're navigating the. Do we just let them go out on their own? Um, and it's kind of leaning that way that they're sort of making arrangements with their friends, and my younger will go with the older, and they'll just kind of do that. Um, Yeah, but it's kind of low key. It's low key this year. We were invited. We were invited to I guess kind of school friends, friends of friends. Every year they do a scary haunted house. So they do up their whole house and you can pick what level of fear you want, level 1, level 2, level 3. And we picked level 3. I was going to take the kids, and then we got a text on Friday that the family was sick, so they had to cancel it. Which, for us, it's a missed experience, but this is a missed moment of tradition for that family because they do it every year. So I felt bad for them that they couldn't, because I think you get sick. It's not like you pause your preparations for something like this. So I'm sure they had everything ready to go because they called it on the Friday, and Friday night was the first night that they were going to do this open house and have people come through. They're going to do it Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I felt for them. Yeah, they we didn't get to go to that. And then we have something local where there's a it's like a forest path in the north end of our town, and the city puts together like a spooky walk. And we went there last year. It was pretty good. It was really good. Um, and then so that the family kind of shifted to where we're going to go do that. And then I started checking online, and the lineups are really, really long. And I'm like, I'm just not down with standing outside like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, waiting 45 minutes to do a walkthrough of this path. I'm just not down with it. So that canceled. and yeah, it's like I was literally quite literally a low key Halloween. Um, I'm doing shrugs for anyone that's, you know, listening to our feed and not seeing the video. I'm like, yeah, I can take it or leave it. I'm always haunted. I'm always haunted by the ghosts of little Chris Halloween past, because my family shifted into the family that would just go out for dinner and leave their lights out. Yeah. Ooh, nobody's home. It's not just a scary tactic. We're actually not there. We're at we're out at O'Toole's or Casey's, Swiss Chalet. And like most times I can remember as a kid when we went out for dinner, it was an exercise in like white knuckling for my parents because my sister and I were just not like we're playing the whole time. So my memories of actually going out for what would be like fancy sit down dinner, not McDonald's. McDonald's was no better. Was like we'd be there for like 15 minutes in and out. Like there's no like chill time having dinner out because neither my sister or I were having it, right? But we'd go out on Halloween and we'd go to like Swiss Chalet and we're treating it like a fine dining experience. My parents are, so we'd sit down, Swiss Chalet, you know, back in the day, back in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, like the menu wasn't as big as it was now, right? There was no ribs. You want a quarter, you want a half chicken, white meat, dark meat. Here's your bowl of lemon water to wash your fingers. Don't sip it. Chris, don't sip it. Stop drinking. It's lemonade. It's warm lemonade. So like, but my dad is like, the server comes to the table. You remember those servers? They would wear like these weird kind of alpine dresses, like a white bustier. Like it was so kind of strange when I think back. Anyways, my dad's like, no, 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 we'll just do the drink order now. I'm like, what? We're gonna do just drinks? Like we're not gonna put the whole order in? He's like, we're just gonna look at the menu. And I'm looking at the menu. I'm like, there's like 5 things on the menu. It's Swiss Chalet 1980s. It doesn't have a you know what I mean? Like you don't order doneness, you don't add or they have no different sauces or spices. What do they have now? They have no sweet chili heat chicken. That doesn't happen back in the 80s. It's like I said, you get a leg. I think they had a sandwich. You get a leg, you get the sandwich, you get a half chicken, you get a whole chicken. Fries, coleslaw. I don't even think they have baked potatoes. They didn't even have the soup maybe back then. It never cantered to me. My dad's like, maybe they did have soup because he's like, or maybe I'll get a green salad. I'm like, what is happening? We'd be at Swiss Chalet for 2 hours. 2 hours. Next week we're back at McDonald's. 10 minutes in and out. Boom, boom, boom. Shove those friggin' burgers in your face. This is horrific. But we would sit on Halloween for 2 hours at like there was this other place in Oshawa called the Bo Peep Tavern. Any old Schwa peeps. It was at the Oshawa Center, right beside the bowling alley. There was a bowling alley there across from the Golden Griddle. Hope I'm triggering a few people's memories here. Yeah, the Bo Peep Tavern. We'd go there. I've told you stories about that one before, where the smoking and the non-smoking zone. The only protection there was a stretch of extra dirty carpet between the two spaces. You're looking at the table, one table over, and the whole table is just like they're looking over at us in the no smoking zone, like yeah, that 2 hours Swiss Chalet. And we wouldn't even get dessert. That was the kicker. They still wouldn't get us dessert. And I think back in the day, dessert at Swiss Chalet, I think maybe they had lemon meringue pie. I think they had pie. I think that was kind of like their thing. And I'd be waiting the whole time, like, oh, maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the Halloween. Nope. Nope. That's the ghost. That's the ghost of Halloween's past for little Chris.
So
maybe I'll have a salad.
So I was gonna say, okay, so I thought for sure dessert was in the play because you're killing
As
time.
did I. As did I every year. You've never seen my dad. Like he's chewing the edge of the bone to try and get that last bit of chicken off the gristle, right? Like, because they just don't want to be back at home. I'm thinking to myself, this is risky. Really? You want to be away from the house for 2 hours on Halloween? That's back in the toilet paper and egg chucking days, right? Really? You want to be that person? All right. I ain't doing the cleanup.
Now, did you get to go trick or treating, or you didn't get trick or treating either?
I had the choice.
But so you went for 2 hours to the restaurant so that your parents avoided handing out candy. Is that correct?
It was one or the other. Like if I decided to go trick or treating. Now, I think I came back to trick or treating. Like I think there was a time there where my parents were just like, yeah, we're not going to do this. like because I did go trick or treating. I know they gave it out once or twice, but my stronger memory is that it's like, yeah, this is a great night for us to go out for dinner. The other thing too, Halloween falls on a Wednesday. You know, in my back in the day, no family, none of my friends would go out for dinner on a Wednesday. Tuesday, no one goes out for dinner on a Tuesday. Monday doesn't happen. It's like a Friday thing, right? You're going out to get right. Takeout didn't happen that much. Even McDonald's, we'd go and we'd eat in. I don't remember ever getting McDonald's takeout as a kid. I think this is even prior to drive-throughs. Like I remember when drive-throughs popped up at the McDonald's, right? So the whole thing was just an alien experience. And then it got to a point where my parents were like, "We're going out for dinner. You can come or not. Keep your key." And then so I'm the one that's at home having to, deal with and I'm like, lights are off. And then I'm thinking to myself, this is why we go out for dinner. I should have just given away the fruit bowl. Like, here you go. Have a piece of fruit.
You're that guy.
That'll teach
The
my
fruit guy.
drop a loaf of bread in some kid's bag because my just revenge on my parents.
So okay, let me get this
soap.
straight. So
Yeah.
you dish soap.
Everything. I'm just because I'm waiting in the kitchen, right? Like, okay, someone else
Right.
is gonna. Here's a hand towel.
So break it down.
Okay.
When you were young,
Mhm.
did your parents take you out trick or treating?
Yes.
Okay. But then came a point where
Something happened.
something happened. They're like, we're not handing out candy, we're going for dinner. So there was, I'm sure, a few years where you didn't go trick or treating because you went for dinner with the family.
Yep. I
And
think that might be
then,
like middle school. I think that happened
okay.
in middle school. Yeah.
But then there was a time where they're like, we're out of here. You can come or not. And then,
That was middle school where if that's what happened in middle school. I can remember them like the week before saying, "Hey kids, what do you think about going out for dinner next week?" We're like, "Oh yeah, let's go out for dinner." And then they say the date and you still don't do the kind of like the calculus on that. And then you realize, "Oh, that's Halloween." But I never sort of questioned what had happened to like I just so the choice was to go out for dinner or and when it was middle school, it was to go out. Initially, it was to go out for dinner or don't do Halloween because they weren't letting me walk around when I was like in grade 5 on my own.
right.
And then I think in grade 9, when I went to high school, there was the grade 9, like there's, I think for me, I arrived in grade 9, and I think this is similar for other kids. You get this like sudden nostalgia reconnection with your childhood. Like the grade nines is kind of like I had a very silly year. So kind of more childish than really my developmental age was. But for whatever reason, you're now in high school as the youngest person there. So it almost like I don't know, like it just felt like in grade 9 I had a lot of fun. Like I was able to have fun. You'd sort of leave grade 8, the cool swagger being the grade 8 student, then you arrive in grade 9, you get to be the little kid again for a little bit. So I had 1 year being the little kid. So I think in that year I ended up going out with my friends. We all got dressed up, we had a good time, we got candy. My family went out for dinner because I didn't want to take my sister with me. They're like, "Well, if you're going out," I'm like, I'm not taking my little sister. So they went out for dinner. So and then it just never went back, right? Like yeah, I ended up, parties or I was working because I started working in restaurants. So just never that's the ghost of yep,
That's the ghost, the
that's the
spooky
ghost.
ghost.
That's the spook, that's my spooky connection.
Well, my parents never took me out for dinner on Halloween, but
Did they give out candy?
they did. Yeah, they did. They were with somebody. I remember being really young and going out. My sister, and my cousin without any parents.
Hmm.
Um, Way too young. So I think my parents did the. You got your mask. See ya. And I had a Superman mask and cape that I wore every year for like probably 6 years. Like my parents were like, "You have a costume." There was no every year, "Hey, let's go get a costume." It was your mask and cape are right there in the closet.
Hmm.
And I was I was a pretty good robot as a child. I just did what I was told. So my
Oh,
parents
I
are
thought
like,
you meant like as your costume.
No,
I thought you
no,
were
no,
complimenting your acting and costume skills.
no, no. It was I could ask for a new one, but they just would say no.
Mm,
Um, so I would go out with the same mask, and then the cape went away. And it was just a mask. Um, that's where I learned to take care of my stuff because you remember those masks? They were made of like this hard plastic that was a little bit flexible and it had just the string. Like they make everything different now. Everything's cheaper and shittier now. But at the time, this Superman mask was the bomb. And I took really good care of it because I knew it was going to have to last me a bunch of years.
mhm,
Um, yeah, I would go out for Halloween. My parents, somebody would hand out candy. Um, and now it's at the point now where like my oldest doesn't want to go out, so I think he's going to be handing out candy. um I'm not sure what my wife will do, and I'll be out with the little one. But me going out with the little one is a little bit selfish because a bunch of parents, he's going out with guys from the hockey team, so
mhm,
a bunch of the dads and maybe some moms will be following them around.
mhm,
um so to be kind of, I'm assuming I'm gonna have fun. I'd like to have fun. I'll dress warm, and that's the other thing too. I have this rule, this Halloween rule. I don't care what the weather's like. If the kids, because I used to take them both out. If the kids or the kid wants to go out on Halloween, no matter what the weather is, I'm game. So if it's pouring rain or snowing or just freezing, if they're good to go, I'm not going to be the one to say it's over. That's always been my thing for Halloween. I'm not going to be the one on this one day of the year that you can walk around to strangers' houses and get free candy. I'm not going to be the one to shut that down.
mhm.
Um, Probably because when I was a kid, somebody did shut it down when I didn't feel it was ready to be shut down. So I don't do a lot of good things, but that's, I think, one of the good things that I do. Um, Dominique says that we usually had homemade costumes, but I did have one plastic mask costume. My
Mhm.
parents bought the costume and it was supposed to last me forever. I'm surprised I still don't have it. It'd be epic if I did, but I don't.
Yeah, I
Superman.
had I for me it was about actually I don't have a lot of memories. I probably actually I'll say the only memory I have of any costume that I ever had was one that I made myself, and it was one of those. They're quite popular now, but it was actually no, there was two. One Hunchback, and I think that was like in, I don't even remember, but I took a bunch of my dad's clothes and I actually constructed the whole thing, which I was kind of proud of. And then in grade 9, like I said, there was this sudden kind of like rebound into childhood. I made one of those costumes. Um, again took my dad's clothes and kind of like, it was one of those ones where the legs, it looked like an old man carrying me on his back. So I built a body and fake legs, and I would sort of climb down through it, and my legs were the old man's legs, and I had these fake legs that came around and looked like he was carrying me around. Like, you can buy one of these things off Amazon now for 75-80 bucks. Like, there's the riding on an ostrich, there's the being abducted by aliens, there's a lot of versions of these. But yeah, I made one back in 1985, and I think it's because I saw it on Benny Hill. Did you ever see that show? Yeah, it was
I
a
I
sassy,
never watched it.
it's a sassy British show from the definitely the 80s. Anyways, yeah, I made this costume, and I actually, there was a place in Oshawa called Sergeant's Rentals. I can't believe this has come back to me. And I rented an old man mask, and so I made just like a I filled the body and then created a, I borrowed from an art teacher a bust of a head, like a styrofoam head, and I made paper mache eyeballs and put it in the eyes inside the mask, and get fake teeth, so it actually was pretty damn creepy. And then just put the rubber mask over top of the styrofoam head, so it looked, and it had like it was not a like well, it just old wrinkly long greasy hair kind of a thing. Like it was horrific. But anyways, I'm proud of that. That's I made that. I made that. Chids, I made that. So that's my memory.
That's awesome. I like that. Rochelle says that they also had costumes made by their nana.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my mom made me. I remember there are photos of me in a what would now be considered a scary clown outfit. Yeah, yeah, American Horror Story and It have done in the possibility of any kid ever looking like a cute clown anymore. I had one of those. I remember my mom made that. I can remember that.
Do you remember kids that would now we would say that they were appropriating cultural uh like stereotypes or whatever? Do you remember seeing students dressed up as um indigenous people or racialized people?
Yeah,
Was that
I was one of them,
oh
but
nice.
not for Halloween, not for
Oh,
Halloween.
just for fun?
No, well, yeah, yeah. So we would go to we went a couple times somewhere in Muskoka. Somewhere in Muskoka, it was like a summer retreat somewhere like I don't know, not Cleveland's House, but something like Cleveland's House. People can Google that. It was something like that. We went there a couple times, and they had like their like when you stayed for a week, there'd be like the events, and then they would have some sort of a costume show, some sort of a costume show at the end of the week. And um, there's photos of me one year dressed up like a movie stereotypical First Nations individual. So there was even like I went out and I made a bow and arrow. I had sort of like a loincloth and paint, like sort of colored paint on my cheeks, like um, very meme and tropey and appropriating. And yeah, I had that. And also the same year my dad went dressed very similarly, so it was like dad and son outfits. So I don't that's my strongest memory of being a really crappy participant in colonialism like that's but as a kid, yeah, I did that. I had one of those outfits. I don't remember what my my sister wore, but I have specific memories of that. Yes.
Interesting. Things
Hmm.
have changed. Obviously, things have changed, but
Yeah. Well, I guess yes, no change for me. Like that's a yeah. Clough ain't rolling that way ever. No one in Clough's family is rolling that way, but they still pop up. There are places that are selling these kits, right?
yeah, that's true. People are still selling the kits, the outfits.
Hmm. So it happens. How about you?
Well, I had my Superman costume for like 100 years, so
Yeah.
that was no issues there. No, I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever did. But it's not because like of my morals or whatever. It's just it didn't. That's not what I ended up having or getting, kind of thing. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, I know that like a go-to for me, people always say, "Are you going to dress up as like a Middle Eastern like war fighter or something?" And we joke a little bit about that, but it's funny how some people go there. They're just like, "Well, you're already Middle Eastern, so you might as well put like the robe on and something over your head." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" It's just I have found it amusing to listen to these people uh, try to justify why that's what I should dress up as on Halloween. So that's
Hmm.
interesting. Other than that, though, no, nothing too risque that way.
Risque or racist?
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
that's
Risque
yeah. I
or
mean, I
racist.
think I think risque was what
Maybe it used to be
was
called risque.
would
Yeah,
have
now
been
it's just
called risque.
racist.
Ooh, that's a risque Clough. Look at you dressed up like that. And then now we would say definitely, yeah, racist.
But I have to say, okay, so if it's racist, it's racist, and if that's what you're gonna do, then do it and call it what it is. Like I don't expect. that if you bring to some people's attention that what they're about to do is racist, that's going to change their mind.
Mhm,
So then just own it. Like that's where I'm at. Just own it then. If you want to wear a racist costume, call it what it is. Maybe they don't see it that way. That's fine too. But maybe they recognize, oh, it is racist, and I'm going to do it anyway.
mhm.
Um, yeah, like let's not pretend that we're all perfect. I know I'm not. And it's interesting that I'll be having a conversation with my kids, and they'll say, "Hey, that sounds kind of racist, Dad." I'm like, "Oh, like let's talk about this. Tell me." And then I realize that something I said or something I insinuated is racist. I'm like, "Well, that's interesting." And then I actually stop and think about why I'm thinking that way, right?
Mhm.
And I'm trying to get them to do the same thing. So I'm not shying away from it because I think I'm trying to do the work to be anti-racist. But there's a lot going on here that's been happening since I was born that have me operating a certain way, thinking a certain way. So now I'm in the zone of like checking myself and reflecting on why I might believe something or think something, and just kind of digging into it. Um, but I would much rather I would appreciate someone saying, "Oh yeah, you're right. That costume is racist." But I think I'm going to do it anyway because my idea, and I know I'm not trying to be racist, but they'll work on justifying it their way, and we go forward. I was talking to a couple of parents yesterday about this. One of them said something to me a couple of weeks ago, and I said, "Yeah, that's kind of racist." And they were not prepared to hear me say that because we don't usually go there when we talk like when we're chatting at hockey or whatever. And I'm like, that's kind of racist. And then it was, well, I'm not. And then we get into the reasons why. And I said, hey, listen, this what you just said, I called it out as being racist. It doesn't mean I'm never going to talk to you again. I'm just saying, are you aware that what you said is racist? And then I kind of explained from my position why I think it's racist. And then yesterday it came up again. We were kind of joking about it. And again, I reiterated the fact that I called you out on it because I didn't know if you knew. Like I'm not offended, but do you know that what you just said rolled off your tongue really easy? Then you laughed about it, but do you recognize that it's a racist comment? I'm not saying you don't have, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying, it's racist. And this is why I think it's racist. Um, it came back yesterday. And again, we were laughing about it. And I just said, hey, man, I'm good if you just call it what it is because I just am. I'm better with that. I'd rather know what you are or I'd rather know than not know because I think it's more dangerous when I don't know who I'm dealing with. But everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I don't need to chat with them about things or whatever. But I've known this guy for a long time, and I don't. It's not something that's going to end a friendship. But hey, you said something that's racist. Are you aware? I'm certainly more aware these days. I think I ignored it for a really long time, and now I'm just not ignoring it anymore. I'll call it what it is for myself, and we go on. But I'm guilty
There
of it too, and I tell them that I'm guilty of it too. But I'm in a zone where I stop and think now. Why do I think that? Or why did I say that? Where's it coming from? Where is it leading to? Break it down, Roland, as best as you can. Learn from it.
it's definitely one of the like, I never engaged with my dad in the thinking around why, like, what was going on there, that this was the costume you we chose to wear for this event. How did we land on that? How did we land on that? So, um, and he's no longer alive, so it's we're not making it back there we're not making it back to that conversation. Um, but yeah, it's kind of on that list. I won't call it regret. It's not exactly regret. It's a wondering. I never had I would say when it comes to this, equity work in general, I never had the chance. I know very much where my mom stands. I've had conversations with her, had disagreements, had coaching moments, like you said, kind of calling it out and saying, "Look, ma, like those words have an impact beyond you just wanting to say those words." But I never got into that space with my dad. I never had a chance to. I make it sound like I never took the chance. I guess, closer to the point, he never had a chance to talk to me about that kind of stuff. He never made the chance. It reminds me of how much work I've done to make sure I have those conversations with my own kids, and that's constant work, right? Um, and you never really have an assurance that that constant work is moving in the right direction, I guess, until someone comments on the outside that your kid is kind, or your kid kind of has a good head on their shoulders, or they sort of demonstrate some bravery or some risk to help somebody else. I am constantly aware of trying to build those vitamins into my kids so that, moving forward, they're able to kind of spread that in their own circles. They can feel more confident to be able to step up, step in, say something, right? So,
I hear you. My parents and I never talked about any of this stuff.
mhm,
Um, like I said, I was generally, I did what I was told. Um, and I know to this, like, we've been at my mom's house to visit, and my mom has said things, and my boys both look at me like, "Did she just say that?" I'm like, "Yeah, she did." They're like, "Why would she say that?" I'm like, "Well, it's not an easy answer. She comes from a different time and place." And like, but I'm like, I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to give you some context. So what grandma just said, I don't recommend that you um I don't recommend that you kind of buy into her reasoning around certain things. I'm just telling you that from the time and place she comes, and her experiences, these are the things that come out of her mouth sometimes. And I, you guys obviously know better because you're both looking at me like, did she just say that out loud? I'm like, yup, she did. And at first, it was hard. It's like, Mom, don't talk like that, like around the kids or whatever. Now it's just like, I'm not going to tell my mom how to act. My mom can do whichever she wants. I realized I was in her house on her time. Um, I need to educate my kids. Now, she's not doing anything that's so friggin' horrible that like we have to remove ourselves, but just little comments here and there that are clearly not appropriate in today's day and age. But she is who she is. She's going to do what she wants, just like I'm going to do what I want. So it's like an expectation thing. I don't want her telling me how to operate, so I'm not going to tell her how to operate. But my kids, they look and they're like, now it's like a joke. Like they'll say, "Remember when grandma said?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, we don't need to relive it." But they're both teenagers, so they're kind of in the middle of enjoying the nonsense of things, I guess. And I just say, well, you don't have to understand. You don't have to understand, but I can give you some context if you wish. I'm not justifying it or making it right. I'm just telling you she has some ingrained perspectives that have worked for her. You don't have to subscribe to them. And the fact that you're saying to me, "Hey, did she just say that?" means that you are moving in the right direction, in my opinion. So let's just keep moving in that direction. This old age thing, it's got me layers upon layers of like, learn to step up and step out, but also learn to respect other people's positions. I don't I don't need to expose myself to certain people in their way, and which is interesting because people then, what I've been getting lately is a pushback. People saying to me, "Shouldn't you just live your life the way you want?" And I'm like, I am living my life the way I want. I know that me hanging out with certain people or talking to certain people is going to put me in a negative space and mindset. So I choose not to enter into that. They're like, "Yeah, but then that person's dictating the way you live." And I'm like, you can see it any way you want, the way I see it is, I don't want to be around that person because it doesn't work for me. So I'm just not going to go and hang out with that person. If you see it as I'm just avoiding conflict or whatever, you can see it however you like. Some of it is true. I am avoiding conflict because they may say something that will set me off, and then we're going to go down a road that's just not a good one. So I I rather not go there. I'll find other things to do with my time and other people to talk with and hang out with. And I said to one guy recently, I said, I saw him at the rink and I hadn't seen him in a while. And he said, one minute you're there and the next minute you're gone. I'm like, yeah, you were with some people that I just wasn't interested in connecting with. And so what you see as me possibly being rude, which I'm fine with, was me not wanting to go over there to see you and then get into it with a couple of the guys. Just not worth it. I figure we would talk because we were messaging. I said I'd explain myself in the message. And then if you're good with it, you're good with it. If you're not, you're not. And then I saw him a couple of days later and we hung out for the whole time we were at the rink. And I'm like, see, I'm okay. I can talk to you in this space because it's just you and I. If a couple of these guys come over, I will politely move on because I'm not going to tell you what to do or who to talk to or who to hang with at the rink. And you may see things differently. I don't see them that the same way you do with these particular people. So I will remove myself. And he says, yeah, man, I get it. I'm like, that's cool. And it's okay if you don't get it because that's where I'm at right now. You get it, you don't get it, whatever. You do your thing and I'm going to do my thing because I need to survive. If I'm doing this 4 nights a week or whatever, I know where the bad energy is for me and where the good energy is for me. And I got to work on that. Anyway, this this got spooky pretty quick. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, snap. That was spooky. I was
That's spooky.
voiceless for a sec. My kids are in a similar space to you, as in they're noticing things in the world and bringing it back. Like you kind of go through this phase of introducing them to something, like drawing their attention to a way of being, a configuration of a family, a new place to travel to. Like you do all this presenting and presenting and presenting to your kids. And then it's always fascinating how that comes back to you from their observations, where it's no longer prompted by you. They just sort of they mention it, and you can see that's the next layer of them sort of working through the complexity of kind of moving through the world independently. And they're in a similar spot where they will openly comment on things about the family, things that may I said, or things that their mom has said, or things that my mom has said. And I've often in framing because it's you realize your power your power and influence as a parent. Like one of my kids has said in the past, yeah, if any of my friends ever smoke a cigarette, I'm never going to be their friend again. And so that's not how we roll in the family, though. Karen and I haven't spoken fondly about smoking, but we've never told someone not. We never said that someone's a bad person because they smoke, or that you shouldn't be around someone if they're a friend if they smoke. Um, but it's interesting when you hear that hyperbole come back to you that way, and you're sort of like, okay, now I need to shape this a little bit, because it's that as a mindset isn't as useful as like an extreme decision, unless you're in danger, um, is not useful. That's just not how it's not useful to you, because then you end up in some ways like what the person said to you, like reducing how you move through the world, right? So you're eliminating your own options. If it's because of safety, that makes sense to me. But if it's because of a difference of opinion, or someone has a cultural expression that you don't connect with, like I think you have to be able to kind of put the fine dials on that and make a better decision about it. And sometimes it means you have to stay in the conversation longer. So one of the ways that we've tried to keep them in a better, longer conversation, in the least with people that they find say offensive, racist things. Depending on the person in front of me, one of the things that we have said is that that person has chosen, like you say, they were raised in a time, or back in the day. We sort of frame it as like they've chosen not to leave back in the day. Like they're just still staying in that mindset. And I said, and the reasons, you'd have to ask them why. Um, but like you said, you've learned that certain relationships, energies, connections are not good for you. And I would agree. And specifically, um, I can't specifically ahead of time tell you what those particular character types are because I have to meet the person in order to kind of say, yeah, like that's just too much for me. I'm happy to kind of like say hello to you, but the way that you kind of are right now or what you're kind of rocking, that's I don't want to give a lot of time to that. I have other places that I would rather invest. Um, but yeah, we've said to our kids, like that person is choosing to stay back in that moment. They're choosing to keep that mindset, or they're choosing to they've actually chosen to say those words and not kind of grow or change their words. Um, I mean, sometimes I have said that's a bad human being. If it's so grossly like, bad, I'll say that. I'm like, that's a good example of a bad human being. Um, they're not doing the work. But those are more rare than just the trying to sort of frame where someone's thinking could come from. Because part of working through, if my kids choose to become active in social justice work or equity work, I think being able to ask questions of individuals that you disagree with, but you are curious about their composition, how they've sort of arrived in that space, I think that's a valuable tool. And the choice, and to know that you have choice to do it, is also a powerful tool as well. Because I've met a lot of people that will flat out say, I can't be around that person because, and the evidence that they give, I won't disagree with the evidence that keeps them from being around that person. But there's another part of my brain that says, but there's still a conversation to be had there. Like you may be missing out on some critical information that, because you are enforcing that boundary. I'm learning about boundaries. Um, because you're enforcing that boundary, you're actually not, like you kind of said it, like your kids aren't in danger from necessarily some of the off-putting things that your mom says, in the same way my kids aren't either. There isn't danger there, but they have enough tools to kind of parse it out and figure it. Whether or not it's uncomfortable, maybe. But then I would sort of say, try to empower my kids. Like if someone around you says something that that you do from your understanding would say that's racist or that's inappropriate or that's colonialist, like test that out, see what happens. Engage in conversation from your understanding, your position of understanding, see where you get with that. And then at the end, once you have a conversation to sort of add to your observation, what you notice, then you can make a decision. They're choosing not to leave that point in time. Like I've chosen, like I know 100% that I am not about to appropriate a First Nations costume. I can't tell you at what point that was official for me. I've chosen to leave that point, right? Um, but also acknowledge that I did it. Acknowledge that I even me mentioning it now causes harm. Like to relive it, for me to relive it just as a memory, but in a public sphere, not only acknowledges that I was there, I did that. I think that the the work that I try and do now to sort of like keep people from doing and making decisions like that is the work of restoring the dignity that I may have damaged in doing that. And like I said, I wish I could have had that conversation with my dad. I really do, as to how did what tell me about the context that made us think, that made us not question that as a bad decision. Like, um, but I don't need that to move forward. I need to own it, speak openly about it. I'm sure there was a big part of that was like that's what the theme of the costume was. There may have been other people dressed like that. I don't remember. I don't remember. I just know for sure my dad and I were rocking that look.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome, dude.
Um, were you able to draw anything today or paint anything? It's the leaves. Leaves? What are those little red things?
I don't know. They're like some of the
Oh,
little we get like these little kind of berry things sometimes in
uh,
our So there's just some of those contrast color, something just added to it. Yeah.
It reminds me of Christmas.
And well, there is a
Reminds me of Christmas.
you got that the yellow, not so much, but it's getting there, right?
The red and green with the little red berries. Yeah, there's something Christmassy for me
Mhm.
about that. Yeah, we're getting there. I have to
It's just
hit
the season.
Remembrance Day first.
Yeah, exactly.
Me, I have to. So tomorrow, Halloween, then Halloween's over. I focus on Remembrance Day, and then as soon as Remembrance Day's over, I would love to get the tree up, but I don't think I'm allowed to do that here. I think that's a family conversation that I'm going to lose. So, but it's
No
okay.
doubt.
I'd love to jump right into Christmas season. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have that podcast sometime in the future.
Um, Great chatting with you today. Thanks for being able to switch up onto the Sunday.
Yeah, you're welcome,
Um,
dude.
yeah, my son's hockey schedule doesn't usually interfere with our Saturday morning stuff, but it did yesterday. So it did yesterday. Anyway, happy Halloween. Hope things go well on your end in
Yep,
Newmarket.
I think I will. Worst case scenario, I get to have some of the candy that my kids collect.
That's not a bad. That's not bad, in my
That's, a,
opinion.
that's the best worst case scenario you could probably ask for, right?
So that's not bad at all. And then here, I don't know what's going to happen with one kid going out. I think I might be competing with my 16-year-old for who gets the stuff that the 12-year-old doesn't want. You know?
Exactly.
But I should try to refrain from the 16-year-old should probably get it because I can go buy my stuff whenever I want. I don't need their stuff, you know.
It's so much more convenient though when it's right on the counter.
100%. 100%. So we'll see how that plays out.
All right, dude.
Have a good one, and we'll
You
talk
too.
to you soon.
Peace, man.
See ya. Oh, this was season 6, episode 8.
9.
No, 9. I went back and I fixed the 8. Now I got to fix this one. This was season 6, episode 9, number 217 of the Decoded Podcast.
217.